All right, and we're live. So, Patrick here of the Daily Ember with special guest Niko House. We're here to talk about the 2020 elections and the candidates in the race so far. Niko, glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
This is going to be a good debate. I've had a lot of followers, or not debate, sorry, conversation of followers saying they'd like to see you on the show. You know, you support Tulsi Gabbard. I'm an avid fan of Tulsi Gabbard. I'm really excited to see her in the race, along with Bernie Sanders again. So, I think we've got some strong progressive candidates so far out there. Who do you like?
I love, of course, I'm voting for Tulsi. I endorsed her already. I think that she is the best option that we have as far as fixing everything as soon as humanly possible. Now, of course, as being objective, I do know and am fully aware that Bernie is the best chance to keep a progressive in the White House for the next damn near 12 to 16 years. So I'm aware of that as well. But the problem is, in with the Bernie side, is that Bernie is an old soul, right?
Yes.
He, unfortunately, so when the facts are presented to him, he will change his mind and he will make the right decisions. And that's a great thing. The problem is, being where he is right now, it is very hard to get the objective facts to him. And Bernie sometimes lacks the intuition to make the right decisions when it comes to things that he can't see or prove at that very moment. So instead of being patient and saying, well, how about we wait and do more research,
Right.
Like sometimes his ego will force him to jump on a side that he thinks will gain him the most support, or at least, I don't say gain him the most support as much as that won't result in a lot of criticism, undue criticism, for going against the established narrative at the time.
Absolutely. I agree. Tulsi Gabbard is great because she is a younger soul and a younger person to lead the progressive movement right now, and she's been very strong with it. I like the bill she introduced, the one to stop arming, terrorist cells in Syria and stuff like we saw,
which seemed pretty obvious, right? I feel like we shouldn't have had to pass a bill for that, but we didn't.
It's common sense, you'd imagine.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. I feel like, and the fact that she couldn't get that passed. And mind you, the Republicans are the one that started this whole war on terrorism. And so when she goes into a house dominated by Republicans, intuitively, we would believe this is going to pass easily. But but both of the parties voted against it, Democrats and Republicans. But what was even more frustrating, in my opinion, was the fact that none of our progressive allies spoke about it.
Yeah, they kind of just stood on the sidelines and remained silent, which I wasn't expecting it to be that way. In all honesty, it's very disheartening to see when that happened, such silence.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was what I found a little frustrating about it was because when you think that's like, when you looking at it commonsensically, you're like, this is a walk-off home run. There's no way we can get this wrong. Stop spending money that we supposedly don't have on terrorists, and while you're simultaneously telling us we can't afford health care. That's all we're asking.
Exactly. And what today, the Senate, I'm not sure if you saw it before the stream, the Senate failed to override Trump's veto to pull out the U.S. support of in Yemen.
So, this is
I wasn't really surprised.
Yeah, whenever I covered that issue, I said, I'm like, listen, y'all, whenever they first passed this bill, which was a great bill to pass, it was easy to unify when you're just saying, I don't want to be, there are a lot of conservatives that don't like Saudi Arabia, even though they won't say it out loud. So, because they believe that's Saudi Arabia actually embodies what they talk about as Sharia law. Most of the Middle East does not. And so it was easy to do that when you weren't going against Trump, when your election isn't reliant on Trump being right or you not calling Trump out when he's wrong. So that's why I figured it wouldn't get overturned. But also, I know how the Democrats play as well. And I'm pretty sure if I go look at the numbers, I'll probably not be surprised, but still just as disappointed because I guarantee a lot of the Democrats didn't vote to override the veto either.
Yes, exactly. And Tulsi Gabbard also, when we're talking about her, Bernie Sanders doesn't get criticized too much for this because Tulsi Gabbard doesn't like getting involved in other countries' wars and stuff like that. But when we're talking about that, she also talks about, expanding our uses of drone wars, which, in my opinion, I would rather see less boots on the ground and seeing actual lives put at risk than drones. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Because we need to have better oversight with drones.
I feel
is one of my
I
things
don't
too. It's a mixed thing with
I
me.
don't feel like her answer was necessarily wrong. I understand why some people would say, okay, we don't want to we don't want to go to war at all. But like the truth of the matter is, being someone who's been in the military, most of the world does want peace, but about 20 people who control the world do not, right? At the end of the day.
Yes.
And so when Tulsi's given the option to, and I watched the review, she was basically given the option, put boots on the ground or use drones. Especially as a veteran, you're never going to say put a soldier's life in harm's way. On top of that, but if the option was use drones or don't be in this conflict at all, especially when we're talking about, mind you, every single drone strike since Obama has been in office has been because we're in a regime change war. Tulsi's avidly against regime change wars. And so all the drone strikes that have resulted in the lives or the ending of the lives of innocent people would have never happened if Tulsi was in office, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once again, here's a caveat to that. As much as I love Bernie, and Bernie supports drone strikes as well, I can't 100% say that's true, right? As much as I love him, domestically, knocks out every single time. But Bernie has fallen victim to narrative after narrative after narrative that makes me a little bit hesitant to believe that he wouldn't have fallen for the Syria rhetoric like Obama did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Hillary.
His foreign policies, most of his supporters, we will admit Bernie Sanders' policy isn't, that's where his weak spot is. He's very strong on his domestic policies, which is fantastic. But when it comes to foreign policy, that's where people can criticize him and attack.
It.
He that's what I really liked. Yeah. And I love that he came out and said that. That was on the CNN town hall, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I actually gained a lot of respect for him in that regard. And I believe that he was teeing up Tulsi there because for those of you who are curious, she and Bernie are working together. Like, I feel like it's obvious. He never mentions her name anymore, which wouldn't be that suspicious if they weren't really, really good friends to such a degree that they felt they had to meet before she announced and before he announced. So the moment that your friend completely ignores your existence for whatever reason, it's probably because there's something a little more at play going on than meets the eye. And so they would be trying to sabotage Tulsi Gabbard more if Bernie was more supportive of her. It would be worse.
Yes.
So the best thing, for what they believe is the best thing would be pretend like we aren't talking at all, because otherwise it would look like collusion. It would look like a setup for him to win and for her to automatically be the VP pick which would also mean there was never really any competition for the VP position to begin with. You have to maintain that illusion just in case. And also, I think it's important for Tulsi to be able to win on her own, because history has shown us just because you're a vice president doesn't mean you're going to be the president. It doesn't mean you can win a race. Most of the time, vice presidents aren't actually electable, and they're not deemed as a threat to the current president as far as electability is concerned. There's one time in history where the vice president was actually considered a threat, to beat the president if he were to run, and that was Henry Wallace, who didn't want to be the president until FDR was done, and then they stopped him from winning. So that was the only time in history we saw the vice president could have actually been the president. But I think it's important for Tulsi to start establishing that network right now. So even if she doesn't win, we know, okay, she knows how to run a presidential campaign, and we know she's in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you mentioned that about Bernie choosing or possibly having a VP pick as Tulsi Gabbard. That's what I've been saying. That's my dream ticket currently would be a Bernie Gabbard ticket or vice versa, whichever it ends up being. My other one I've said would be like Bernie and a Turner ticket since she's been next to Bernie throughout the whole thing. But back real fast, she stepped down back in 2015 to endorse Bernie Sanders. So anybody that just wiping this away with, like you said, just ignoring Bernie as something a coincidence, it's not.
Yeah, it's not, absolutely not. And like I said, because him mentioning I'm weak on foreign policy, you can read more, you can learn more about from what people don't say rather than what they do say. And when he openly, he won't, I mean, he could have said, he could have pandered, right? He could have said, I'm weak on women's issues and issues of people of color, and that's what I would like to work on. He could have easily said that because he does have blind spots, not on women's issues, actually. That's a bold-faced lie. If anybody told you that, he's always advocated for women. He took women across the border to get medication. Like that was the main reason he did that. So he's never been weak on that issue. However, on people of color, I wouldn't call him weak, but he does have blind spots because if you're an old white man who's 77 years old, there's no way in hell you can't have blind spots. As men, we are always going to have blind spots on women's issues. Like there's no way we can help. It's just inherent. But when he says, I'm weak on foreign policy, oh, golly gee, I wish we had someone who was strong on foreign policy, who was really knowledgeable about the issues. Oh, yeah, we do have one. So now he's like almost building in and weaving in reasons as to why there's only one person that he would consider for VP. Elizabeth Warren. Some people got excited because he said that he talks to Elizabeth Warren every day. Yeah, just because he talks to Elizabeth Warren every day doesn't mean she's going to be a VP. Elizabeth Warren is not VP material. If anything, I could see her being in charge of Treasury. I could see her, actually, that's basically it.
That's it. No, that's where I put it. I said Elizabeth Warren would be great as the head of the Treasury, and I was saying also, like, Tulsi Gabbard, I think she'd be a great Secretary of State if she didn't get chosen like as a VP or win. Also, I think that'd be a great position.
I want to see her win VP because if she was VP, we know that it would be very similar to Dick Cheney, and because she has that kind of gravitas, it would be very similar to Dick Cheney and Joe Biden. The reason they were both picked as VP was because of their foreign policy influence. And so with Tulsi, she would basically take the stand to make sure, if I'm going to be VP, the Secretary of State isn't running shit. I am. Basically. Because the Secretary of State, I don't care who they pick, isn't going to be better than Tulsi. She, like she said in her speech, she doesn't need to listen to a damn general. She don't care how many stars he has. Because she knows all of this already. She's been on the ground. She's telling us truths about what was happening in Syria. I mean, and the more I talk to her about it, the more I end up learning. Like when she came onto my show during our interview, she was talking about, I met with the opposition. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know about that. She was like, no. I mean, like, I met with the actual opposition. I was like, what do you mean the actual opposition? She's like, the religious opposition, which was the original reason that there was beef in Syria, because they have a secular government, and any religion, like, it's like the Republicans during Obama's age was the religious opposition. Did we start a civil war because there was an opposition? No. There's always been opposition in Syria, and there's never been a war. What the problem became when we tried to co-opt what they deemed as an opposition, pretend like it was like they wanted to be liberated when they never asked for it. And it turned out that both Assad, obviously, and this opposition despise the quote-unquote rebels, which are actually terrorist groups that we put in Syria. And then it completely, it completely ruined that was actually coming from the other opposition, and it ruined any chance of diplomacy between the two.
Yeah, exactly. That's what people don't really understand. I mean, like you said, you learn new stuff every day, it seems like, when we're looking at the Syria situation. There's just so many movies to it, and there's just such an echo chamber of information coming out about the war on Syria that it's hard to, for people that don't follow pages like us and independent media and get separate outside sources from stuff that isn't MSNBC or CNN or Fox News. It's hard for them to be like, well, what's really happening in Syria? Whose side are we on?
Well, I can tell you this. If it's a simple solution. You can, if you start right here, then you can basically start knowing you can learn where to research from that point. The moment that we call a country or a leader a dictator, you automatically assume it's a lie, right? You got to automatically assume it's a lie because there are plenty of dictators that we put in power and you all know zero of their names. It's okay. No, there's nothing wrong with it. That's just a simple truth. The reason that we learn about, for example, Fidel Castro, that's all we learned throughout grade school if you're American. Fidel Castro's a communist. Communism is bad because Stalin was a communist. And they associate them throughout the history books, but never. And Stalin was actually a bad guy, but Stalin wasn't the reason the Cold War started. Truman was, because he ignored the Yalta Conference because Dulles told him to. And Truman was a fucking moron. So, but we associate Fidel with Stalin, forgetting that Fidel on his little island of Cuba was trying to take on the entire Western and imperialist and military industrial complex. Yeah. So in that regard, he had to make a deal with the devil because who else was going to stand up? They always say, well, Maduro's working with Russia. Why is Russia there? Why is Russia there? Russia's literally there because we won't fucking leave.
Because we're trying to fucking install another regime change. And it's like, oh no, Maduro socialism. Like the shit that's going on in Venezuela is from our years and years of embargoes and sanctions. And people are just,
they didn't want, I'm going to tell you like this.
They heard.
They didn't in Venezuela. They do not want what happened in Cuba. They thought the embargo was going to hurt them. They thought the embargo would cripple them. But instead, because socialism is probably a little bit better than what they tried to pretend it was, they discovered the cure for cancer and put it in an inhaler. They have a 50% male, 50% female legislature, which would be more progressive than our legislature. Yeah, the only reason the Fidel is basically a figurehead and mostly a military figurehead, and that worked for Cuba because they had so many leaders bought off by the United States for the last 100 years that when they finally got someone who was actually going to stand up for them, not just as a country but for the people of color, because Fidel also desegregated Cuba. That was they became the best medical school in the world, with being completely cut off from the Western world. And so when they see that success in Cuba, despite us trying to do everything we could to cripple them, they don't want that to happen in Venezuela. Because if it happens in Venezuela, it's going to be a problem for real because they got oil. And when other countries, because right now, obviously, I think we're the largest exporter of oil now. We've 93% of our oil comes from us, or 90. We're the largest exporters of oil now, and all of a sudden, and it took us a long time to get there. And the powers that be, like the Koch brothers, who aren't going to be on this planet for much longer, want to take advantage of it for as long as they can before we convert to alternative energy. But if Venezuela, who has the fourth largest oil reserves in the world and plenty of crude oil that plenty of refineries would probably want to do business with, if they have control of their oil, they can do business with people who have always wanted to usurp the United States from its imperialist throne, not because they hate Americans, but because they're scared shitless. Wouldn't you be? Oh, I can't. Oh, man, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Whoop, whoop. Give us 1 second. We'll return to our regularly scheduled program. Go to your on the left of your screen. You should see a little control room button. You might have muted yourself by accident. Oh, there we go. We're good.
We there?
We're good now.
All right.
What were you saying?
I was like, but no, back to where you were saying. I mean, John Bolton has literally been saying that the main concern of Venezuela, he said in one of his interviews recently, is the oil reserves they have. And it's like, how much more straightforward can we be that we are just going and overthrowing all these countries and regimes and implementing regime change across the world, and it isn't for resources? Anybody like trying to say that we aren't in all these wars and situations for resources at this point just don't understand the current situation, I feel.
Yeah, 100%. The truth of the matter is well, first of all, we don't do anything for altruistic reasons. We're not a magnanimous country. We knew about the Holocaust. We didn't join. We knew about it. We didn't join. Hitler stopped Jewish people from running during the Olympics. We didn't do anything about it, right? To such a degree, we were hiding it to such a degree that Time magazine made Hitler Man of the Year because of what he did, to bring back at the time thought was bringing back Germany's economy. And we refused to join the war. And the reason why was because our manufacturers, GE, GM, and Ford, all the big names that you still know today, had Nazi subsidiaries, and they weren't quite done making all the money they wanted to make yet. And so it wasn't until maybe 3-4 years later, after the initial blitzkrieg, that we got involved, and we still hadn't even fired a damn shot at Germany yet because we were in Africa protecting their damn colonies. We don't do shit to save people. We're allowing Saudi, not even allowing them, we're selling them the weapons to bomb Saudi Arabia, talking about some Viva Libertad for fucking Venezuela. You don't give a damn about those Venezuelans. We've never done that. And so basically every bullet that we fired over the last 100 years has never been to save anybody. It's always been to hurt people. Like George H.W. was the first director of the CIA or the FBI. Was it CIA?
CIA.
Yeah. His dad was the reason that his family got rich was because his dad was on the war industry board that got invented introduced after World War I. And because 20,000 millionaires and billionaires were created after World War I or during World War I, they created a board to make, it was wartime economy board. That's what it was. And yeah, bro. And basically, literally that board, their entire job was to make sure that we stay in war. Fast forward.
See, I didn't even know that whole blitz right there.
This is Bush's grandfather. This is his grandfather who was on this board. And he gives birth to HW. HW ends up on the CIA as the CIA director. And we think that
imagine
the CIA
that
is anything but evil. So it's frustrating to me that anyone, like especially for people on the left, I kind of expect out of people on the right at times, but even they're getting tired of the shit. But when I see anybody on the left, like Cameron Kasky this morning was responding to one of Kyle Kalinski's tweets. It was a very satirical tweet about Maduro, and he was like, "Well, I kind of agree with you, but can we at least agree what's happening with Maduro is bad? What the fuck does that mean? What is bad?
What exactly like?
And it was
your bad, my bad.
He was kind of like, I actually don't, and I don't believe it's his fault. He is coming up in the Florida school system, like he said in his tweet. But at the same time, and plus, look, mainstream lies all the time. But when you say something like, "But we can agree with what's happening with Maduro is bad," what's to agree on? Tell me what's bad. What happened? They can't give me one. Well, he's an oligarch. He's a fucking bus driver. He is a bus driver. Like when they say Assad is evil, because everybody knows every ophthalmologist or optometrist you've ever met has been secretly an evil genius. Like the narratives don't make any sense.
Nah, it is. It's a bunch of hearsay.
Huh?
So it's a bunch of hearsay they're always spewing.
Yeah, hearsay, exact propaganda. Like it's not even just hearsay; it's legitimate propaganda. It was legal. It was legalized to sell America propaganda in 2012. Obama let the shit happen. He was perfectly okay. And isn't that ironic? Because actually, that was right around the time that Gaddafi had actually agreed to step down as a leader, because he was a chairman of that. He was the elected chairman. For those of you who do not know, Gaddafi was the elected chairman of the African Union because Africa loved Gaddafi. The reason that Gaddafi was able to maintain power for so long was because we like to judge our standards of leadership based off of our situation in the United States, but we forget that every other country is scared of us. And therefore, when they find a leader that they believe will not bend the knee to American imperialism for a couple of dollars, they love their leaders. Gaddafi was a shining light for Africa, no matter what you felt about him. And then to make it, to kind of solidify his legacy with Africa, he stepped down. But that was a problem because he stepped down so that U.S. would stay out of Africa. And that was a problem because they didn't want to liberate Libya. That wasn't the fucking reason they wanted. They have slaves there right now.
I was waiting.
They wanted to be stabilized. That's how we are able to establish leadership there and go in and pillage and plunder. Syria, we went there to supposedly stop people, stop the Assad government, and we just burned the whole bitch to the ground. We did the same thing in Afghanistan. We've been doing that in Afghanistan for 70, 80 years. We did the same thing in Iraq. It was because Saddam, for good, if you consider him good or bad or anything in between, Saddam, there was less violence there, less poverty there. There was less problems in general when Saddam was in charge of Iraq. And the reason that he was able to stay in power so long wasn't because they necessarily loved him. It was because they were like, shit, at least he won't bend over to America. He'll stand up for it.
Exactly.
We don't, but like I said, all the problems that we have at this point, like the problems with the leaders that we have, the only reason those leaders keep maintaining power is because America sucks sometimes. Well, it sucks. All of our foreign policy sucks.
Yeah. But yeah, we just like Tulsi Gabbard is literally the only candidate though that'll be able to get in there and take foreign policy seriously. I mean, I've got hopes for Bernie, obviously, but again, like you said, Tulsi Gabbard, she's been there, she's seen this, she knows what it's all about, So
when your job is stopping people from dying during war, it's almost inherent that you would start questioning why these people are dying. Why do I have to do this? What is the point of this? What do we hope to achieve? And when you start digging, the natural conclusion is you end up where Tulsi is mentally today. When I interviewed her, her and I talked before the interview. We almost fucked around and didn't have enough time to do the interview because it was one of those conversations. And I asked her because I had watched a speech it was one of her 2012 speeches. She was still, I want to say, a councilwoman at this point, and she was about to be a congresswoman. It was about climate change and environmentalism. And it was like she was still just as articulate, still just as powerful. But her tone was it was very, very edgy, very commanding, very I know what's best, listen to me tone.
Yes. As
you would expect from almost any politician, to be completely honest with you. It's not out of the norm. And it wasn't a bad speech. It wasn't like it wasn't a good speech. It was everything she said in the speech was true. But I immediately heard the difference. And I asked her, I said, what happened in your life that changed you and your demeanor and how you carry yourself from that speech to now? Because when she speaks now, anyone can attest. That's like she's asking for your help, right? Rather than asserting that she knows what's best. She's advocating for peace above all else, and then we can work on the problems that plague the country and asking for your help to achieve that. And she just told me that the only thing that had changed was that she started peeling back the layers of lies that we had all been fed for so long, including her. And the more she learns, the harder it was to be that person. And that's a fact for everybody. I'm not the same person today that I was in May of 2015 when I started working for Bernie Sanders' campaign. And if anybody is at this point, I don't know what to tell you, because that was that entire 2 years, whether you were on the left, right, or anything in between, is going to go down in history as an enlightenment period in American history. It is.
It is.
And the fact that she let the water, crash over her to smooth her over, rather than just, okay, I don't want to upset the powers that be. She was going to be the president, people. When people always say,
Mhm.
well, Tulsi can't, she could speak on it because she had nothing to lose. She was going to be the president.
What?
She was next in line. She was a vice
Yep.
chairwoman of the DNC, and she was at the time 34, 35 years. No, she was 33 at the time when she left to join Bernie. She was 33, turning 34. And she was next. She was going to be the youngest president in history, guaranteed first or second woman, in history, first woman of color, first Hindu American. Like, she was going to be it. She gave it all up to do the right thing. That is experience, because you can't. The thing about that differentiates Bernie from Tulsi is that Bernie, I mean, it's a good thing. They're right. He has always been on the right side of history. Always, as far as the major big issues that were right in our face. It was, and that's true. There's a problem with that, though. When you're always right, you're rarely learning.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You're not putting yourself in situations to, learn more.
Exactly. Because you feel like I don't want to say you feel like you don't need to, but the necessity is just never there. You never are held accountable. And Bernie has never been held accountable. And he's, because of that, he actually makes some rhetorical missteps, because when people try to hold him accountable, especially people that he considers allies, it's almost like he takes it personal. He gets defensive and starts touting his rhetoric or his platform, rather than just saying what we've seen Tulsi say. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. I was wrong.
On that.
And that's not just a Bernie thing. That's every politician thing. It's an ego thing, and it's probably a male thing as well. But it's definitely something that separates Tulsi from every progressive we've ever seen, because she can say, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Let's figure this out.
And like you said, not too many. How many politicians do you hear come out and admit their past doings as wrong? Not a handful.
And can explain why they were wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's something to say and admit that you're wrong, and it's a whole nother thing to understand why you were wrong, and that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, like I said, it's politics has been male dominated for quite some time. And therefore the culture is such that it has been dictated by how males have generally lived life throughout history, right? If you admit you're wrong, then you're going to lose power. That's basically how it's perceived. And of course, it would take. And then Hillary basically ran. They always say she would have been the first woman president. I mean, if you mean she has a vagina and some breasts, I guess. But she still perpetuates all the negative stereotypes rightfully associated with the majority of the male species, because that's the only way she'd been able to navigate the political system thus far, because she wanted to still be corrupt. So she had to act like them. But Tulsi's goals are different. And so she embodies a lot of the positive qualities that you would see in a mother, in a sister, in your wife, in your grandma. She's very compassionate. She's very patient. She's inquisitive. She listens. She isn't. I'm telling you. Listen. There was somebody who commented on one of the videos, the Venezuela video that I did, where because Tulsi's the only one who spoke out and got it right thus far in Venezuela, advocating for peace and maintain international law. And it was a very sweet comment. It was somebody who had already suffered from American regime change in Chile. I copied it, I screenshot it, and I sent it to Tulsi because, after you're dealing with all negative and negativity all day because of the mainstream, it's nice to have a little motivation, extra motivation. And Tulsi was like, "Oh, thank you so much. That's beautiful." Like, that means something to her. It does. And people don't get that. I'm like, if people really knew, and I don't mind talking about this now because it's like I endorsed her already. There was a time where she sent me a video, or her sister sent me a video of like, at first I thought it was just, I was literally like looking at Tulsi. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, why is what is a random, huh?
You're like, what is this?
Yeah, like it was literally just Tulsi staring straight in a car. I was like, why am I looking at this? And I turned on the sound and I hear a voice in the background. And she looks at, they pan the camera to the front, and it's actually the entire car, which at this point is primarily made up of her family, her husband, her sister, and they're looking at the phone, and that's a video of me, and she looks back at the camera and says, "I appreciate you, Niko."
Hey.
Like, and it was, and she said it's not because of what you do for the campaign, it's because of your objectivity and your willingness to recognize truth, you know, and above all else. And that, you know, a lot of people will be like, oh, you know, oh, she said something nice about you, but that isn't it. That's not it. She had nothing at the time to really gain. I had 15,000 subscribers. I had, you know, when she first reached out to me, I only had 6,000 subscribers. Okay. When I tell you she had nothing to gain from me, if anything, I could have hurt her campaign in some way, form, or fashion for all she knew. You know,
and she took the risk. It was a risk she was willing to take.
Exactly. She said what she felt. She didn't say, you know, what she felt was a political calculation, because she could have done that. She went out of her way. I hadn't endorsed her yet. I didn't even know I was going to endorse her till the night before, to be honest with you. Like, and I hadn't done anything for her yet outside of just tell the objective truth about her campaign as it compared to everybody else. And it wasn't anything. If anybody watches my show, you know, I've critiqued her. That was actually a week after I critiqued her for like a 25-minute video critiquing her. I'm not even joking. This is a true story. I did a 25-minute video critiquing her. And rather than, because I know how to critique someone as an ally, there's a difference between critiquing someone and smearing somebody.
Yeah.
Because how else are our candidates supposed to know the truth? They're not going to get it from the mainstream. They don't have enough time to research and dig like we do. So that's understandable. Yep. And so, and then she, by the way, it was a video where she's basically, I was critiquing her interview with The View because they basically pressured her into saying that Assad was some kind of crazy dictator and so is Maduro. And then she actually went on CNN and corrected herself. So like,
I was going to say, I remember watching that View episode live because I was just interested. Yeah.
And because we don't push our candidates left, then literally no one will. That is our job as political commentators. If you're about the movement. Now, if you're about clicks and likes and the paycheck, do what you got to do, I guess. Just don't try to influence our movement. Appreciate it. But in all seriousness, that type of person in the White House is legitimately something we have never seen before. We've never seen that.
And another video I like of her. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just saying it's always been ego.
Yeah. There's a new video. I think you shared it also of Tulsi at a recent event with that Afghan civil female that was there.
Oh,
she came over and she was telling. Yes, thank you. I couldn't. It was slipping my mind all there.
Yeah, I'm actually.
That was a fantastic. Oh well, great. I'll have to keep that in mind to watch it. But man, that was such an emotional video. Like just watching that, and Tulsi afterwards just going up, hugging her, and just. It just shows that Tulsi Gabbard, she's human. She's human. She's fighting for you. She's fighting for us. She's fighting for everybody of the world that we are affecting with our policies, you know. And that's something that's why I respect her. I've always loved her as a politician. She's great at what she fights for, and she's been consistent just as much as Bernie has.
And you know what's interesting? I've noticed this pattern of people who have experienced their own genuine evolution and understand what they were like before and why they were that way. They've all supported and endorsed Tulsi. And if they haven't explicitly endorsed her, they've definitely said nothing but glowing reviews of her. A good example of this would be Joe Rogan's recent endorsement of Tulsi, which I'm actually covering right after I get this video done. I'm uploading it. It's like Joe Rogan was not a conservative, a libertarian, he was definitely socially liberal. But he was what is in YouTube world called, he was an algorithm gatekeeper. Like he's the reason that the Dave Rubins and the Jordan Petersons and all those types, the ones who are Steven Crowder, like the reason that they are able to do as well as they're doing is because of Joe Rogan. Because his videos drive people to those conservative channels, which is why we don't have anybody like that on the left that's actually consistent. And so That's why you see these conservatives having like literally hundreds of thousands of views, but on the left, it's different on YouTube. So that's the reason. Now, because of his willingness to have everybody on, because he's never discriminated in that regard, he had Kyle on, Jimmy Dore on, Tulsi on.
Yes.
He had, I want to say, did he have Bernie on any? No, I don't think he had Bernie on.
No, I don't remember.
He had somebody else from the left on as well. I can't think of it right now, but basically he's had a lot of different people on, and he lets people expose themselves. And it got to the point where I still remember this rant to this day. This man, it was something, another black man had gotten killed, which unfortunately seems to be par for the course in America, but he just got tired of it. And he got tired of how, and it was the woman. It was the woman who called the cops on
the Australian?
No. The one that called the cops on the barbecue. That's what it was.
Yeah, barbecue Becky.
He just got tired of it, and he was like, I'm basically a fucking I'm almost a full-blown socialist. Boy, I almost spit my damn drink. I said, what the fuck just happened? But then he starts going in it. I was like, nah, he's just saying. Bernie Sanders is dope because he voted for Bernie in the primaries. But he was like, if you think that this is okay, if you think that killing black people in the streets is fine, he said, if you're a fan of my show, fuck you. You're not on our team. Straight like that. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Right. I'm curious how many people unsubscribed after he said that, because he had to lose a handful.
It seems like he's gotten more popular, not even joking. And it's because he's more willing to engage. And he very rarely will say a controversial opinion. He asks questions, but he never. He's good on that. Like that. Right? He's been further fucking out.
That's why. Yeah, I was gonna say that's why I like when he has say right-leaning figures like Alex Jones and stuff on there, because we all know that he's crazy and he's spewing a bunch of stupid shit. And when he goes on Joe Rogan's podcast and he starts talking, Joe Rogan's just sitting there looking at what's his face on the computer, like, can you Google this shit real fast? Is this true? Is this happening? Does the water really turn the frogs gay?
No, it's true. He did the same thing to Candace. He didn't, and I admire him for that, because he has different goals in the movement or just in general. So when you have different goals, you're not going to be as emotionally invested in what you're doing, right? So he's listening to the opinions because he's always just trying to gain more knowledge and gain different perspectives. Yes. Obviously, I'm a little bit more demonstrative because I am very much so trying to change what we're dealing with. And because of that, Joe has the ability to sit there and let someone expose themselves. Like with Candace Owens' interview, he basically exposed the fact that Candace needs to see a therapist. She needs to see somebody.
That was a good episode.
You haven't seen the episode?
Oh, no, I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've sat through that whole thing.
It is literally, it is a therapy session where Candace tells us, so when she was in high school, which only, once again, this is Joe led her. He has a way to soften people and make them expose themselves for the good or for the bad. And she was saying, in high school, I was dating this guy who was a white guy, and like the governor's son or daughter or whoever started threatening Candace, saying that he was going to hang her like Martin Luther King, basically what he said. And that was like one of the nicer things that was said. And and so she was like, it wasn't really that big of a deal because the kids got expelled from school and their lives were basically ruined for years. And in my humble opinion, that's exactly what should have happened. But she says, they so because of that, everybody tried to make a victim out of me. And because that's not what the conclusion anybody else thought was going to be. And she was like, Joe looked at her, he said, but you were a victim, right? Like
you suffering from Sherlock syndrome?
Yeah, bro. I was like, bro, my mouth dropped. My mouth dropped. I was like, hold on, what did she just say? I thought I misheard her. Well, their lives were forever. They didn't deserve that. They were just high school. And I was like, Candace, what the hell just? And he's like, but you were a victim. You know that, right? Like, objectively speaking, you were a victim. Yeah, but I don't want to be seen as a victim my whole life. But he's like, but you were a victim. Like, you literally were. And the moment I heard that story, amongst a lot of other things, like, for example, Candace Owens is actually very passionate about criminal justice reform in the prison industrial complex. Why? Because her family has been a victim of the prison industrial complex. So all of a sudden, she can think clearly when it comes to that. She was also bullied because she was in an area where there weren't that many black people in her school district. She was one of the more intelligent people, and speaking from experience, you usually end up around a bunch of white kids, you know. Yeah. But being black, especially in my day, you kind of get excluded. There's almost nothing you could do, and so you want to try and capitulate to their culture and do whatever you can to fit in. And that's basically what happened to her. It became a lifelong struggle to fit in, and then it became financially beneficial.
Yes, yeah.
So now she's convinced herself of this shit where everybody, like black people, play victim all the time. We should do Brexit, and she's talking about the Democratic Party is the problem, and refuses to say the Republican Party is also the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why I don't understand when people like Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens and stuff say they're anti-establishment and stuff like this, but then they are very pro-establishment still.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk is a fucking scumbag. So that guy's a shit. Got hired, by the way. A lot of people don't know this. Charlie Kirk's second in command was a racist bitch, like, to put it nicely. She literally said in a text message, "I hate all black people. I'm not even kidding. Fuck all of them."
Wow.
Somebody who thought they were like, "Oh shit, I did not know I was working for this type of organization," was in the group chat and leaked the information to the media.
There you go.
Of course, Charlie had to fire her, but he said that I'm letting her go, but I wish that everybody should be like this woman, praising her glowingly. Right after that, not even a month later, mind you, Candace was pro-Obama, I hate Trump with everything in my soul, literally 5 months before she got hired at TPUSA.
Yeah, it was a crazy switch.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, she loves Charlie Kirk now. Trump is the best thing since sliced bread, and she changed her entire. All of a sudden, she's super Christian. She doesn't drink anymore. This is also her transition, by the way. Also happened around the same time. She gets a Trump-loving boyfriend who was part of a country club, of course, that convinced her. She said some critical things of black people, and they were like, "Wow, I wish more black people were independent thinkers like you." And whenever a white, this is the patriarchy, right? This is what happens. This is why it's hard for me to be mad at her. I don't like her, but it's understanding how the patriarchy works. There is an inherent understanding that those dudes are the ones who rule the world. And if you please them, you can have almost everything that you want as long as you don't step on their toes. And so you're going to convince yourself of whatever. What's that damn syndrome called when you fall in love with your captor?
Sherlock syndrome, right? Is that
Sherlock?
Is that the one? Or maybe I thought Sherlock was the one when I thought that was it. I thought
I really cannot remember what it's called, but people watching, I'm sure know what it is. It's basically you end up sympathizing with your captor, and you start being more understanding about why they're doing what they're doing, even if they're evil assholes. So that's basically, I mean, a lot of the country is like that, right? We've all fallen in love. Well, not everybody. We've broken out of it, but we've become captive by the system. And because of that, we're much more willing to look the other way and be a little bit more understanding to the evil that system perpetuates, especially if we are directly or indirectly benefiting from it.
Yeah, exactly. Why should I stop the system that's benefiting me and keeping me with my breads and circuses when it's not, what's the other choice I have?
Exactly. So
it was Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm. There you go. Stockholm.
There we go.
In anybody in the Democratic Party, like who's a diehard blue, no matter who Democrat, they definitely have Stockholm syndrome. They Republicans don't have Stockholm syndrome. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're trying to maintain
just assholes. They're just doing the dirt.
But then they sent some of those Republicans to the Democrats, gave them some money because the Koch brothers were the ones who funded the transition of the Democratic Party in the 90s whenever the Clintons took over. So they sent some of those Republicans over to the Democratic Party, say, hey, here's some money. Take over this shit. Say whatever they want. Say whatever you need to say, and then completely switch. And we'll keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And we even throw a black man in front of them at some point to make him think we're serious. And here we are today.
Here we are. Yeah, it's a hole. I don't even know what to say on that part, because it is the Democratic Party. We see this whole blue wave, that's still pushing centrist Democrats. A real blue wave would be, getting people that support the working class and fight for the working class, not Wall Street. So that's why it's funny right now, since Joe Biden announced that he was running. I'm seeing this whole blue wave hashtag next to his name. I'm like, that dude is Republican light. That dude isn't even close to being a centrist Democrat.
I don't even know if he's Republican light, right? I would call Rand Paul Republican light, because for the most part, domestically, he disagrees with every progressive policy, but like Republicans used to be back in the day, he is completely isolationist. He does not want any type of military intervention unless it is absolutely necessary. That's a Republican light. Joe Biden agrees with Republicans on literally, he wants to gut Social Security.
The man went, after announcing his run for presidency, and ran to GOP donors and Comcast, right? Those are like the first group of people that man ran to. It's like, that guy's really working. Yeah, he went on a scent.
96,000 donors, and somehow he managed to come up with $6.3 million. People were like, well, that's kind of impressive. No, it's not. It's not impressive. No. Like, if you were a sure thing, in my humble opinion, and because it's Joe Biden, it's a VP. If that was Obama, for example, that boy would have walked away on the first day with 15 million from everybody, whether it's lobbyists, whether it's from the people. But all of that money, most of it, I should say, didn't come from the people. It came from lobbyists.
Exactly. Which, another thing I've been looking at with the lobbyists, The Intercept shared an article about how Kamala Harris, Beto O'Rourke, and I can't remember, I think it was Cory Booker was the other one.
And Cory Booker all took money from lobbyists, even though they said they wouldn't. And the way they got around it was because the lobbyists were state lobbyists rather than federal lobbyists.
Yep, and that's exactly what Biden's doing too, and people aren't, looking into it all the way. What that recent was that MSNBC poll that showed Biden above Bernie Sanders by like 3 or 4 points, but they didn't even poll our age group.
Oh no, the CNN poll.
Okay, CNN, same thing.
Oh, it was even worse than that, man. They didn't poll our age group. They only fuck our age group. Shit, you even gotta ask. Can you ask anybody below 50? Yeah. Anybody below 50. They wouldn't. So they polled. They had the original poll. This is what they said at the top, right? It's 1,000. It was 1,000 people, 1,011 people, or 1,007, excuse me, people questioned. There were Republicans, there were Democrats, and there were left and right leaning both ways. 1,000 people. The original margin of error was 3.6%, which is phenomenal for a margin of error. And originally on the outset, you're like, wow, this might be a legitimate poll. So then they give you all the bullshit numbers, right? You're like, okay, this doesn't really make any sense if this is the margin of error. At the end of giving you the bullshit numbers, there's also they're like, oh, a little more about the methodology, by the way. For this particular poll and for only this question, the one that is getting blasted by CNN, we only asked people over 50. We did not acknowledge any of the answers from right-leaning Republicans or independent-leaning or Republican-leaning independents. And we only asked 411 people. The damn margin of error skyrocketed to 6%, which renders the poll completely and totally useless. But that's the poll that CNN is pushing. And what's even probably more hilarious is that you are only, what they said he was 20 points ahead of Bernie in the poll, in that particular poll. Yeah. Bernie was at like 15%. And he was at like 28% or something like that. And I'm like, that's not good. That's not good because you only asked 411 people, and it's probably off the little call list that they've already established because that's what they do. And you are they did everything they could to rig it. You are the former vice fucking president of, unfortunately, the most popular presidency in history. And that's all you can do? When the number one voting block in the country right now is the millennial voting block? Bruh, if I was Biden, I'd be scared out of my goddamn mind.
I see. I've said this too from the start with Joe Biden. I don't think he's going to be the serious candidate that's going to be running against Bernie. I think it's going to end up coming down to like either Bernie, Tulsi, and Kamala.
Yeah, Bernie,
Tulsi and Kamala.
Bernie,
I think
Tulsi and Kamala, or Bernie, Tulsi, and Buttigieg.
Yeah, those are definitely the three I'm seeing, because Joe Biden, I'm seeing him more as a fundraising tool for the DNC at this point.
Yes.
I think, and because we've just seen so many issues with their fund. Yeah, really. How long? How long can he fundraise?
So it's like I said, I think it's going to be it's interesting because now Bernie, and he knows it, he's very aware of it. They have no opportunity to beat him. Like I said, from the last 3 years, and people think I'm exaggerating when I tell you that I think that Bernie actually, if the poll was objective, if there was really 1,000 people asked, if it was what the hell, if it was really a poll that was 3.9%, if it was a 3.9% margin of error, that shit would say that Bernie has a 90% chance of winning.
Yes, it would. If
it legitimately asked Democrats, Republicans, left-leaning, right-leaning, polled all of them, including the swing states, which is crazy. They refuse to poll everybody. Huh?
They don't even touch them, it feels like.
35 open and semi-open primary states, and you're going to ask Democrats who are 50 and older.
Mm-hmm.
If you truly did that, listen, what I tell you, man, look, I asked people at McDonald's. I asked people at Taco Bell. All right. I asked people at nice restaurants. I worked in Brio, which is an Italian grill, like a Tuscan grill. I was a server there before I started doing this full time. And I had plenty of political conversations. That's actually where Rubio, unfortunately, takes his family to eat when he's back in Miami. It's a nice, rich area. Guess what the Republicans say there? Well, Bernie's the only honest candidate, really. I like Tulsi too, but Bernie is really the only one I think could beat Trump. The Republicans in rich-ass Cuban Miami are saying this. And they're going to sit here and trying to convince the world. I have never heard. The only reason people started mentioning Kamala was for them to say, I've never heard of her before. Where does she come from? They say, I might like her, but I've never heard of her before. Why would I vote for her over Bernie? Bernie should have won.
What's shame for?
Right here. My black my black friends, none of my black friends have ever, like all of my black friends and even my black associate friends, like the ones that are kind of like acquaintances, they've never wanted anybody but Bernie. They were legit. There was only maybe one guy. It's because he was a Democratic Party loyalist. And
well,
I was going to say that the truth of the matter is, Bernie is doing something historic right now, and we aren't even getting to fully take it in because the mainstream is because if they admit 1 million volunteers is insane.
Yep, it is. And none of these other candidates can get that many. That's the problem. Like, if the DNC wants to win, if they truly want to beat Donald Trump and take control, they should be aligning behind Bernie Sanders or Tulsi, because Bernie Sanders, the last 4 fucking years, has been the most popular senator in the United States.
Nah, he's been the most popular politician. Period.
Okay.
By the way, it's been in the world. He's been the most popular politician in the world for 4 years.
Well, here we go.
He had 85% favorability with hardcore blue, no matter who Democrats. 85% favorability.
Mm-hmm. But how are we going to criticize Bernie Sanders? Not us, the blue no matter who wave. How are they going to criticize Bernie Sanders and say he is splitting the vote when he continues to be the most popular and liked politician out of our whole country? How can they possibly find the logic to say that man is the one splitting the vote that is hurting?
There is no logic. I think that people should understand that the truth of the matter is, to be a politician and to be a well-recognized politician in America, you don't have to be smart, people. There's a reason that these people say and do the dumbest shit where you and I would be like, what? Are you serious? Did you really think we're going to fall for that? Like, the reason that Trump won is because most of the country just isn't that stupid.
Yep.
That's why he won. Yep. That it was the natural conclusion to you cheating. And you skipped a step in democracy. That's what happened. You skipped a step. It's like when you go back in time and you change something that you weren't supposed to change, like you decide to bet on a game that you weren't supposed to bet on. You cheated, right?
Yep.
And you were expecting to come back into your present and just be able to have all the benefits from cheating, but none of the consequences. Exactly. That's not how life works. That's not how the process works. And that's exactly why we have electoral college. Because yes, there are instances where a popular vote may happen, but the popular vote was only won because you had California and because you had New York and because you had Florida. But was that representative of how every person in every state felt? No, not even close. It would have been more sensible to weigh it out. Well, let me see how the swing states that aren't even really swing states, right? Pennsylvania, they say, well, that's a swing state. Motherfucker, Pennsylvania has gone to Democrats for like 40 years.
Yeah, it's not a swing state. That thing.
Michigan almost always goes blue.
Yeah.
It went to Trump. Wisconsin almost always goes blue. It went to Trump. Fuck the popular vote. The popular vote don't mean shit if it's not representative of what most of the country wants, or in this particular case, does not want.
And that's something I've had this conversation with people before about the electoral college that don't, they want it to be based on the popular vote all across the board. It's like, in your mind, that might sound like the right thing. Like I used to think about that when I first got into politics and stuff too. But like you're mentioning right here, it's not going to be the proper representation of the whole state.
Yeah, because people think like if you don't want the popular vote like in its current form, then you love the electoral college. I'm like, no, I'm not saying I love the electoral college either. I think the only option would be ranked choice voting. Yes. Like that would be the only option. But if you use a popular vote as it currently stands, people have to understand how population and economic and population disbursement goes. Listen, New York is blue and California is blue and in Florida, certain parts of it are blue because of the economies, right? When you have economic prosperity, you're more likely to build there. You're more likely to have more colleges, universities, be more educated, have more money to influence or educate the people. Once you become more educated, it's been historically proven that you automatically become more liberal, which is why Massachusetts, even when it's Republican, it's still super liberal, right? Because they're not judging it based off of like Republican, I have to vote lock in step with the GOP. They're like, I believe I'm a Republican because of the legitimate definition of being conservative, right? They're still going to vote for whoever they think is the most progressive. That's how they're educated enough to be able to tell when they're being played. So that's why so you see a certain crowd with a certain amount of access dispersed to these areas. Now that doesn't, maybe somebody likes living in fucking Montana. There are a lot of people just love living there. They love the lifestyle. Does that mean that their lifestyle and their needs are not as important as those who have had the means or the desire to go towards a coastal area that's economically prosperous because they were the ones who, import, export, that was how your economy was run back in the day. You had to use ships. Yeah. Ships, so if you were in the coast, that was where money was made, which is also really weird because it's kind of surprising that South Carolina never really benefited from that, like ever. Don't really get that. No. But, Louisiana did at one point, Florida did, New York did. And a lot of the people that's why the Ivy Leagues all are in the Northeast.
Up there. Yep.
And and mind you, people say, well, that's those are just libtards. That's why they just want to cover. No, Ivy Leagues, Harvard, all these schools, they were Catholic, like religious schools.
Yes.
So the logic that, is people were educated. When you're educated, you can call yourself whatever you want to, but you have more of an ability to make the correct decision. And the truth of them, and also not only that, but you can recognize when somebody is just damn near pure evil and they're just worked out for themselves. A lot of the time, and now with that, of course, does come with a certain amount of influence, because all of us, at least in our younger days, unless you have another influence around you, you have 70% of people vote the way their parents tell them to. It's changing now, but that's just how it is. Not only that, who do you associate with and who are you around? Other people who vote blue. And you don't want to be a guy that tells people that you didn't vote Democrat when you're in California. You know, like they treat greens like shit in California at times. So it's important to understand like why the popular vote is inherently flawed when 70% of the country votes the way their parents tell them to. And not everybody has access or knows where to start doing research to make the right decision because they don't have the right people around them.
Oh, and what we saw back during the 2016 campaign, you know, some studies came out showing that the older generations were the ones sharing all the, you know, the most information on social media and stuff. And it's because they don't know, they didn't grow up like we did in high school and stuff in school, where we learned how to do some sort of research online, and we know what to look for, you know, what are real sites, what's a bogus site, and everything.
Yep. When I was in debate in high school, there was two things they told you never to quote. They said, don't ever quote Fox News ever in your life. I was like, I mean, I don't like them, but why is that? Like, we could quote CNN, which is also kind of weird. Especially because debate in high school was at the time was very conservative. It was very libertarian-esque.
Okay.
And I was like, well, why is that? Well, Fox News isn't legitimate. And that's true, right? We know it's not. We know it's true. But also, Fox News will straight lie. They won and I guess because they had lost the lawsuit, or no, excuse me, they won that Supreme Court case that allowed them to lie because they said they were entertainment.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was why. But we knew that. And we also weren't allowed to quote Cato Institute because Cato was like damn near openly libertarian. And therefore, they're very selective about the facts they like to talk about.
Yes, and Cato, that's cock funded, isn't it? The Cato Institute.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't remember if that was one they had their hands on.
You know, and of course with your research papers, you know, there were very strict requirements as well with primary sources and secondary sources, and like and that used to be only a college thing, but then it creeped down into high school. And you know, so you're right. We had an ability, you know, to discern whether or not we should be sharing information because we know where to go look to verify if it's true. But that's why, you know, the millennials are about to be the largest voting bloc. We're the most educated, which is why they keep us out of the polls.
Yep, and that exactly. They understand that the tides are going to change. The turn is on its way. You know, we started it already. We picked up AOC. We got Ilhan Omar. We were picking up so many seats this last run. So the next 4 years, I see 6 tops is when I think we'll have the full transformation for like the progressives to have like the stronghold of the Democratic Party.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to a friend from North Carolina. That's where I went to high school and went to college. And he was like, man, I'm not going to, because he is he's way more optimistic than I am. Because he's like, where he is, progressives are taking over. Because they just outnumber. We're outnumbering them. Maybe like everybody's opinion isn't being changed. Maybe that's not it. Maybe it's just y'all shouldn't have fucked around and had 5, 6 kids.
Yeah,
okay? And sent them to really good schools because now we want a planet to live on in the next 10 years. That would be really nice.
Great. It would be great. I agree.
And it's basic survival instincts. I gotta fix this shit, or I'm screwed. So and that's why it's the saying goes for organizing that all politics is local. That's why people, when they were saying Trump is the worst thing since since the first Ghost Rider movie, and that was like, okay, that's all well and good, but New York isn't all of a sudden going to become fucking Alabama, and Texas isn't going to become California because Trump gets in office. If you are that concerned with the outcome of the presidential election, I guarantee you, put the right people in city council, elect the right mayor, elect the right commissioner, you will feel 0% of the effects. Unless you're talking about like federal money that Trump will bring down. For example, in Miami, when he tried to kill the whole sanctuary city thing, Miami actually voted to, or the Broward. I think it was Broward. It was Broward, excuse me. So right above Miami. So Broward County immediately voted to not allow ICE in courtrooms and in jail to try and deport people, which canceled his shit out. Because that was the only way, that's the only way they can get to you. We don't employ ICE agents in Broward. So the only way they could get to you is when they're called and they just show up to court. And literally, it is based off of reading a name. Hernandez. Oh, I gotta go get that guy.
Stereotyping, yeah.
Exactly. It's literally based off of stereotyping. Broward County said that, damn, all that noise. I mean, they also know who their constituents are, but at the end of the day, they did the right thing because for the most part, people put the right people in office, and that's what happens. Politics is local. We figured out how they had been screwing independents so far because we were paying close attention to Tim Canova running for a House seat as an independent, and everybody had gotten involved at the local level, and we found out they were using what's called fraction magic to rig the machines. And we would have never known that. And that helped us figure out what really happened with Jill Stein.
Yeah.
So that's all politics is local. If you're not involved in organizing locally in any way, form, or fashion, then don't talk to me about the damn outcome of the presidency. Because if you're organizing and educating at the local levels today, in 3 years, you don't got to tell them where to vote. They've been paying attention and they've already been educated and they know where to vote.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's got to start in your own backyard because that's the only way you're going to see the immediate change and effects that you want. It's something I always push with my followers. After the 2016 election, I left the Democratic Party during the Dem exit. I'm a registered independent now. I joined the Green Party and I launched a chapter out here. But I left that after a couple months because, there's a big thing within some of the Green Party. I feel like I'm not sure if it's actually Green Party members or infiltrators that are like major Bernie bashers, and it's hard to grow the Green Party and stuff when there's a good portion of people who are inspired by a campaign and then you're out there just attacking it.
Yeah, no, well, it's so I want to be very clear about something. There's a reason that I don't push party politics. Like I don't say, go join the Green Party, for example, because people forget that the Green Party, unfortunately, is still part of the same system, right? So like, just as an example, if we're taking the legitimate platform that the conservatives claim they represent in a vacuum, okay, fiscal conservatism sounds like a great thing, right? Autonomy of self and self-determination sounds amazing. Being able to, to worship and have whatever, freedom of religion is awesome. Constitutionalism is great. But is that actually what they are? No, because they're part of the system. Until we fix the system, party politics is irrelevant.
Yes. And that's another thing. We need a...
If we were I don't mean to interrupt, but if we replace when there's a power vacuum and we replace the Democratic Party with the Green Party, what do you think the Green Party is going to become?
Same thing.
Same flawed human beings run the Green Party and are just as out to get power as the Democratic Party. A lot of them are rejected. They're Democratic neoliberal rejects who didn't go to the right elitist school. They didn't go to the right elitist school. They didn't make the right connections at the right age. And therefore, they went to go to a party that had, like a vacuum of power. And they were looking for somebody to fill that role. But that doesn't mean when they get the opportunity that they're going to do something different.
No, exactly. And, that's another thing. If we want to see corruption out of politics, if we want to seriously take this on, we have to take any form of corporate money out of our political system, if we want to. And also we need to look at open primaries because people always want to have a third party run for president and have a shot, but we can't do that if we have closed primaries and they don't have a shot,
Yeah, well, that's ranked choice voting. If that was
Yeah.
And that's what kills me about, the system in general, and any party that claims to be, we want to legitimately be able to win a federal election. Then why aren't you pushing for ranked choice voting? I haven't heard one Green Party person tell me that there is an initiative to push ranked choice voting in their particular state. And if there is one,
I too have came across that.
And I know a lot of Green Party people, but I haven't even heard the Green Party really celebrating what Jill Stein has done. Jill Stein is the reason that Pennsylvania will now have to use paper ballots and have an automatic audit because she caught Hillary cheating during the general with the lawsuit. Nobody talks about that.
And that's yeah, exactly.
They're talking about, well, vote Green Party. Not that like I said, usually the Green Party candidate, even for the faults of the party itself, is the right choice. Like, Bernie or Tulsi would be the right choice despite the faults of the party, the Democratic Party. But at the end of the day, it takes more than a president to change the country.
Yes, exactly.
Change, and that change can only happen when everybody is on the same page, or at least there's an effort to be made to change the system. Now, the Green Party is I think it's now on the ballot in 30 states or something like that automatically.
Yeah.
That's a long time. But have you heard of an initiative that was introduced at any point in the last 3 years to make sure they get on the debate stage now?
Nope.
But now it's too late because the election started. And the judges
exactly.
Games. So now they have another situation where they won't be on the debate stage, and yet we've had a board of advisors for the Green Party, or executive board for the Green Party, for the last 3 to 4 years. What the hell? What have y'all been doing?
What they do. Exactly. And that's my problem with the United States Green Party. I think we are extremely unorganized. I feel like the leaders of the Green Party are not as organized as they could be. Now, Illinois here, we've got a pretty strong Green Party. I think the last election we just picked up 16 seats, and they were all Green Party members here. So, in Will County, in Illinois here, we've got a pretty strong progressive movement. It's pretty impressive. And what Chicago picked up 5 DSA seats this last election also. So, I mean, it's very live and that we have
DSA members, or the other ones.
Yeah, they were endorsed through the Chicago chapter DSA. It wasn't a bunch of bogus ones.
Okay, because man.
Yeah. I got you. I know there's some sheeps and wolves in sheep's clothing out there saying they're democratic socialists. It's no, we know you're social Dems.
Now they're neoliberals. That's what it is. They're neoliberals.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but I gotta head out here pretty soon, man. Do you wanna cover anything else before we finish up?
No, we want to wrap this up, and you let them know if you've got anything coming up you want to talk about, and then we'll just hit it off.
So, well, for one, Tulsi is actually at about 70,000 donations right now, but she is a little worried because she's basically been given information that says they're about to try to move the goalposts if they end up having 20 Democrats qualify for the debates. So, although she's actually polling at 2% in most of the polls, at least, and 4% in a couple of polls, that would qualify her as well. But they may move the goalposts on both donations and polling. So she wants to make sure that she has at least 100,000 donations by June 15th. So go to Tulsi2020.com to donate to her. Also, Mike Gravel, he's a little bit, I think he's close to 3/4 away. Mike Gravel, who actually endorsed Tulsi on my show, which was surprising as shit. I was not expecting that. And he said it so casually too, bro. I was like, hold on, what did you just say?
Like, back it up.
He's like, yeah, I endorse Tulsi, and if I get on the debate stage, I plan on endorsing her there too. I was, bro, it's still crazy to me. He just said that way too casually.
yeah, I bet. I gotta go watch that video.
Yeah, I have it on a page. I separated that clip so that people can find it. Because I imagine once he hits the debate stage, a lot of people are gonna want to know, a lot more about that situation. But yeah, so Mike Gravel is very close to him in the debate stage as well. And that man, for those of you who don't know who Mike Gravel is, he is the man who went to the Supreme Court to bring us the Pentagon Papers. So and he almost got put in jail for it. Nixon, only reason he did not was because Mike was very popular, and if Nixon would have pursued it, he would have absolutely lost his reelection. So so go donate to Mike Gravel as well. Other than that, yeah, follow the page if you don't. You can just look my name up on YouTube, Niko Niko House HOUSE, or go to MCSC Network.
All right, man. Well, it's been a good chat. It's been good having you on here. So have a great day, man.
Oh no, I appreciate you having me on.
Definitely. All right. Well, if you guys need anything, I'll drop the links below for Tulsi Gabbard's campaign, along with Mike Gravel's, for you guys to donate to, and I'll also drop Niko's link as well into in the description there. So thanks for watching this live stream. I'm going to try to do these more in the future. If you don't follow me on Instagram already, it is at The Daily Ember. No spaces, no periods, simple as that. Thanks for watching, and remember, this has been your Daily Ember.